Your name?
Paul Murrain.
And where are you from, Paul?
I'm from London.
And tell me what you'd like to see happen at this conference over the next couple of days. What would you like to see come out of it?
Well, I think some kind of collective understanding from the particular position of what I was presenting just now. I'd like to see a greater understanding of the importance of how we put together the different scales of public and physical space, because I think we don't understand the complexity of the networks that give people choice, that empower people, that bring them together enough. I think even those of us who believe in the significance and importance of the grid to urbanism, it's a much more complex and sophisticated and fascinating subject than we give it credit for. To be honest, Michael, I think.
And it's so often the case that these conferences have great aspirations, but it seems to me what your presentation earlier did was really to talk in a much more concrete way about the structure of cities and what kinds of tools we need to be able to manipulate that structure for human beings. Is that right?
Very much so, because one of the things at conference, there are so many people who say who describe the condition we're in, who talk about life and cities when they were better, and it's terrific, and it's absolutely right, and it's full of great observation. But I often get frustrated as an urban designer about, okay, fine, but what the hell do we do the next time we expand something, the next time we regenerate something, or the next time, heaven forbid, there's some kind of natural disaster? You know, the natural disaster at Christchurch, for example, was so tragic, but it's arguably just as tragic looking at some of the things they're doing afterwards. And so we have to understand that the networks of the built environment is a political system itself. You know,
that seems a very different point of view from the notion that we're in a postmodern condition and we have to accept that, and what we can best do is simply express our angst, as it were, through our art. You're saying, no, there are concrete things we can do. There are ways that we can approach the built environment as a political system, as you put it.
Well, absolutely, and you know, we've been around a while, but we're not that different from the way we've been for many thousands of years. We still need to transact, we still need to interact. It's the essence of being civic, it's the essence of having a civilized society, and therefore if the built environment doesn't encourage and facilitate the interaction, we don't curl up and die like other animals necessarily, but my goodness, we can't fulfill our purpose. And so it is extraordinary to sort of say that we've built towns and cities recently that have fractured our society. Therefore, we might as well continue because our society is fractured. You know, so I mean, it's totally ridiculous. What we need to do is understand how we structure our kind of ecosystem, because urbanism is our ecosystem, and it has similar kind of principles and rules that are as universal as a termite mound. You know?
You said something very interesting, which I alluded to earlier. You said the built environment is a political system. And of course, there's a lot of debate about, is that environmental determinism to say it makes you behave? Well, can you expand on that? Because it does control or limit the way you can behave, right? Isn't that right?
Well, it does, but all political systems do. Mm-hmm. You know, taxation. And health provision. These all affect how you are allowed to behave and what you're allowed to do in your world. So the built environment is as political as any other form of control. And of course, it's not a question of being deterministic, because any built environment allows certain people to do certain things and stops others doing others. And so the question then is if you look at it that way, what is your view of democracy if you believe as a designer you are going to empower people? Because the most useful definition or meaningful definition of democracy that I have is that democracy arbitrates between conflicting freedoms. So if you believe in that as a designer, you've then got to design the built environment in order for it to arbitrate between conflicting freedoms, not for any particular freedom. And so it's not deterministic per se. And what it's doing is trying to be as democratic as it possibly can. And if you look at previous network systems that we've created in order to transact and exchange in all forms of commerce and economy and culture and art and science, then that is the essence of being civil. And so the way we structure the network is fundamental to all of this stuff. We've still got to make it work at other levels, but you can't make it work without the understanding of the role of the grid as being an element of self-actualization.
So what would you see coming out of the conference in concrete terms, methodologies, tools, something more than perhaps aspirations? What would you suggest?
Well, I think it's got to try, and whether it's at this stage in the conference or at later it's got to develop whatever it believes in as a democratizing force for people who have very little control over their built environment. Participatory processes are incredibly important, and long may they continue, but they don't automatically get you participatory products. And the built environment sticks around a lot longer than any individual who lives in it. So it's incredibly important that we understand that we've got to make participatory products, and therefore we've got to develop operating systems where everybody who's involved in that understands the operating system and is incentivized to produce it. And if we can do that, we're getting on the right lines.